The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, December 27th, and today is our monthly AMA show. So you can ask those of you who are on the panel live. We'll go through a few rounds with them asking questions. We'll also be taking super chat questions. So the super chat is on, so feel free to use it. And let's see, do I have anything to say before we get started? Reminder, no show tomorrow. Nikos is, I'm going to be interviewing Nikos on Monday. Socialist of the right is the topic, but of course you guys will ask questions and you can ask Nikos whatever you want. And what else? And of course, January 31st, which I think is Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll start the show and it'll go 4+ hours. And that'll be our final show of the year. We'll do a summary of the year, looking forward to 2026. And we'll raise a lot of money, hopefully. So we'll combine all that. All right, so let us get started with a panel. Let's start with John. Questions?
Yeah, Yaron, great to see you. Registered for the Ayn Rand birthday in end of January down in Fort Myers.
Yeah, in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And
Good. Good.
First time for that. I don't have any question that comes to mind. I'm going to go back a little on college. Ayn Rand groups ask the question, don't know why that the number of campus clubs decline, has changed. What, I'm trying to think of what the meaning on that is, that campus club organizations. I don't know. Is there, has anybody been able to give, what are the thoughts that have come to pass on the decline of campus clubs?
I mean, I think the answer is the internet, but campus clubs basically started dying more than 10 years ago. And by 10 years ago, they were already dead. 10 years ago, campus clubs died. Even clubs that, like University of Michigan and some others, where there was a club there forever and it didn't get renewed. So I think, one, campus clubs always relied on one person's energy, enthusiasm to lead them and to get them all together and to put it together and to get people into the group and to organize activity. It was always a challenge when that one person left to create a succession plan. And a lot of clubs failed to do that. But I also think that getting together in person became less valuable. The quantity of available objectivist information online, it was huge. The ability to create groups, whether it's on, I don't know, Reddit or whatever the different platforms for people to create chat groups out there, the ability to do that increased dramatically. And there are lots and lots of objectivist kind of places where people chat about objectivism online, right? There are a bunch of those. there was just a lot more opportunities for people to engage, and I think the culture generally went online. So there was a lot less value to face-to-face interaction, and everything kind of went online. That's the only explanation I have, because it's not that the numbers have dropped generally. It's not that readership has dropped. It's not that interest in Ayn Rand has dropped, at least that we can measure based on the things that we have. It's campus clubs just died. And it's across the board, across the country. Once in a while, somebody will try to resurrect the campus club. There was, one guy was enthusiastic in Texas, and they organized a campus club in Texas. And Texas is ideal to have a campus club because you've got a lot of objectivists already living in Austin. You've got Greg and Tara and Ben and a bunch of intellectuals living in Austin. And yet, once this one person left, nobody continued, and the club died. So it's just, yeah, I mean, I don't have more of an explanation than that.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
People going online is my only explanation for it. All right, let's see. You guys have all got your video off, which is making it much more difficult for me. So those of you who can and don't mind, turn your videos on. Much more fun to see you anyway. All right, Steve.
So I've been thinking a lot about like how principles and pragmatism apply at work, like specifically in engineering. Because while we would say here, like someone's being pragmatic as like an insult, like in that say, and you talk a lot about John F. Kennedy having like a pragmatic foreign policy. You're not meaning that in a complimentary way. Like in engineering, there's a super popular blog called The Pragmatic Engineer. You'll say, "Oh, that engineer, he's really pragmatic." And in thinking about this, I don't think the words aren't talking about the same thing. Like one of my observations is that a pragmatic engineer will consider a lot more than just like the engineering. Like in software, we can think about like the business context or what other trade-offs might be. And I was reading a book on SR-71 Blackbird, and they were talking about, in this one engineer being like super pragmatic when they're coming up with kind of like esoteric lubricants that they're going to use that can deal with like this temperature range of, plus 1,000 degrees down to, room temperature. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that, because like it seems like we talk about like engineering principles or engineering pragmatism, this might extend to like other parts of work life. Like we're not talking about the same thing as like
No.
a moral principle.
No, and I don't think anybody's ever said about JFK in a positive way that he had a pragmatic foreign policy. I think it was a negative way. But so people misuse the term pragmatic when they apply it to engineering and other things. What they really mean is practical. That is attuned to reality, can get stuff done, and isn't, it takes context into account, isn't bogged down by, I don't know, some platonic form of perfectionism. And I think that what they mean is practical. Pragmatism is the rejection of principle. And I don't think you can do engineering if you reject principles. I mean, implicitly, all engineers abide by certain principles, whether they know it explicitly or not. They have to. If you do liquid mechanics, there's certain principles by which liquids travel, and you take that into account when you do the math, and you just can't avoid that. And you can find practical ways to get around obstacles and to get around certain issues, but you're not by doing that negating the principle. Whereas pragmatism as a philosophical concept is the negation of principle and the negation of long-term thinking, which is what negating principle really means. So when we talk about pragmatic engineers, what we really mean is practical engineering, practical people who could get stuff done are practical. But particularly, and I don't know how this is used in Europe, but in the US, those concepts are being mixed up and confused. Pragmatism is viewed as just, and there's a sense in which, sorry, just get stuff done, just get it done, just get it done now, whatever it takes, ignoring kind of the philosophical roots of what they actually mean by it. So pragmatism is really an epistemological concept more than it is a moral concept. It's basically saying principles are not just moral principles, any principles just don't apply. There are no such things. You can't generalize. The sun might not rise tomorrow. You have to take that into account. You can't generalize. You can't come to real truths. There are no universal or persistent truths.
To what? So I think if I said to someone like, "Oh, this politician is pragmatic," if I said that to an engineer, they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, that
That's good.
sounds like what I do."
Yeah. Yeah. So they're misusing the concept. So the concept comes. It's not an objectivist interpretation of the concept, right? So pragmatism is a philosophy articulated by John Dewey and God, his name escapes me, but late 19th century American philosophers. William James. William James is the other guy, right? So they actually articulate what they mean by pragmatism. The way the engineer is using the term is inconsistent with the way the term was defined in the 19th century. Now, you can say, to hell with that, this is the new way to describe it, but that creates confusion. It creates a certain confusion because the term comes from, as far as I know, the term comes from the philosophy, not the other way around. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the term existed before the philosophy, and it's the philosophies that perverted it. But one way or another, we're not talking about the same thing when we're talking about it. And I think a lot of people use pragmatism as meaning practical rather than it as meaning unprincipled.
Do you think it's worth pushing back on?
Not really. I mean, there's certain concepts that it's really worth fighting for. Now, it's worth pushing back in a sense on all concepts because it's important we get them accurate so we know what we're all talking about. But in the cultural battle, if you will, no, I mean, selfishness is hard enough. Capitalism is hard enough. And those are, I think, important ones. Individualism. There are a few that are really important. Pragmatism is probably just not, I don't think, that important enough to push back on.
Thanks.
Maybe later in the battle, like at a later stage, it will elevate. But we've got lower hanging fruit to fight over before we get there. All right, thanks, Steve. Adam.
Yes, I'm concerned, and I'll just follow up on what Steve said. Generally, when people say pragmatic, they mean contextual. Principles apply in the context in which they are known. And someone who does not try to apply principles outside their proper context is popularly called pragmatic. But I think that we objectivists really should insist on accurate language. And we should say he is a contextual thinker rather than a pragmatic thinker. Now, I have other words that I think are frequently misused. For example, saying public schools instead of government schools, saying illegal immigrant instead of unauthorized immigrant. And I think the really big one is the market. Many people, not just objectivists, but on the liberal right generally, speak of the market in the same way that socialists speak of society. So instead of saying individuals will make their choices, we say the market will take care of it. And I think that is so liable to be misinterpreted as meaning, the market is some kind of magic collective force. Why don't we just say individuals will make their decisions?
Because because that doesn't really explain what's actually going on. Individuals would make their decisions in a particular context where the decisions get aggregated and there is a certain market phenomena. The price of a stock is determined by individuals making decisions, but that doesn't tell you anything about the fact that these individual decisions get aggregated into a particular price, and that's the function of the market. The market is supply and demand. Supply and demand is individuals making decisions aggregated in a particular place at a particular time in a particular way, and that we call the markets. I think using the market is legitimate. We need to understand what we're talking about, and we should convey that to people. But I don't think it's helpful to say individuals making decisions. I also think illegal immigrants is legit. They're illegal, right? There's law. The law says it's illegal to immigrate into the United States without authorization, without permission of the state. And in that sense, they're violating the law. And I don't see illegal as offensive. I agree with the other ones you mentioned. Pragmatism. I mean, if you look at pragmatism, let's see, this is the Cambridge Dictionary for whatever, but they're all about the same. Solving problems in a sensible way that suits the conditions, that's contextual, that really exist now, rather than obeying fixed theories, ideas, or rules, which is principles. But they're creating this false dichotomy between contextual and the principle. So it's but that is exactly what the pragmatic philosophers did. They divorced pragmatism. They divorced context from principle.
But I think that by using proper language, we can change the way people think about things.
I agree completely. We should use proper language. The question is, what fight should we have with the culture? That is, should you go around with your coworkers telling them they're misusing the term pragmatist? I think that there are other hills to fight on.
I will say,
I think there are other hills to fight on, but as an individual, I can say contextual rather than pragmatist, and that will cause my interlocutor to think again about what they mean.
Sure, you should speak accurately. The question is, what should you argue with your fellow? If somebody uses selfishness wrong, I'm going to go up and correct them just because it's a term that's I really want to inject into the culture. If they use pragmatism wrong, I might not interject and correct them.
But in the case of immigrants, saying unauthorized brings in the idea that there is an arbitrariness on the part of the state authorizing some people, not authorizing some people, making the decisions about who you can deal with instead of leaving those decisions to you. And all that is encapsulated in the word unauthorized. You say illegal, and people generally understand that to be criminals, you should go to prison and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say I'm an illegal driver because I speed. Just to make it clear that illegal doesn't mean criminal. But the reality is that I think you're loading unauthorized with way too much meaning. That is, you could be authorized to come into my building or not authorized to come into my building. You can be authorized to come into my country or not authorized to come into country. I don't think if somebody outside of objectivism thinks it's, oh, that's arbitrary and that one's okay because it's private property and that one's not okay. Indeed, they conflate the state with private property all the time. There's so many issues that I don't think with regard to immigration, the semantics matter that much. Whereas, again, there's some terms that I think deserve to be fought over. There are others where I just don't think it's worth the effort.
Saying government schools rather than public schools.
I agree with that one. I try to correct myself whenever I say public schools to government schools because I think government school is much more effective. Public public is conflated with public corporations, which are not government corporations. So it's public is too loose of a term. Government is much clearer and more obvious. I agree completely on that one. Thank you, Adam. Let's see, Randy.
Can you hear me
Hey,
all right?
before, sorry, you're on. Before Randy goes, can I just add a quick follow up on that and ask you? Like,
Sure.
would you correct the person in a political discussion? Because I will say that I think it's a very important term, pragmatic, to identify the phenomena that we see politically in reality.
It depends. I mean, when you're doing a debate with somebody in a political context or whatever context, they're throwing out so many concepts that are misused, that are being misused and abused. I mean, the biggest frustration in a debate is they've just spoken for 5 minutes. As you know from my videos where I analyze other people's videos, I could pause them every 20 seconds and comment on what they
Yeah.
just said.
True.
So I have to retain 5, that's 3 times every minute. That's 15. I would have to have 15 points where I contradict them on. I couldn't do that. So you have to prioritize what you're going to do. Certainly there's a context in which correcting the use of pragmatism would be appropriate. It depends on what the debate is on. It depends on what else is being said. It depends on a lot of things. It's contextual. Randy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
You know a lot about that, and there's some things I'm missing about that. I understand that there's some work towards cancer with that. I also understand that JFK has stopped funding some of the mRNA, and I wonder what you know about that.
Yeah, I mean, mRNA technology is an incredibly valuable technology that I think during COVID proved incredibly efficacious if you understand what the goal was of the vaccine. And since then, and before that, mRNA was developed primarily for cancer. So both Moderna and BioNTech, the two mRNA companies that developed the mRNA vaccine for COVID, were both working on cancer vaccines before COVID hit. And since then, there's been a lot of promise with regard to mRNA vaccines for cancer. And also mRNA vaccines for potentially other contagious diseases. But at least in terms of contagious diseases, RFK stopped all the funding for it. There's a lot of fear that he's going to stop the funding for cancer as well. A lot of the mRNA research is moving outside the United States because they're worried that they won't be able to get FDA approval and they won't get funding in the US. So it's moving to China. China's China was very behind when COVID hit on mRNA. They couldn't develop their own mRNA vaccine. So they are really trying to accelerate development of mRNA technology right now. A leading Chinese scientist who was working in the US at a tenured position in the US at a research lab at a major university is just moving back to China. I know Europe is investing quite a bit in mRNA vaccines because they see the United States not doing it. Yeah, it's tragic and sad, but that is the reality. It's another biotech technology that could have huge ramifications for our health that the government is sabotaging.
Very good, thank you.
Sure. Okay, Daniel.
Hello, Yaron.
Hey.
Politics is such a mess. Is it now time for someone objectivist, not me, to get back into politics?
I mean, sure. It has to be somebody who likes it, who enjoys it, who is going to understand that he probably lose quite a bit, and willing to live with that. I understand Rob Trasinski is running for office, so he's running for Congress. So
You need to be a little bit of a wingnut, don't you?
a little bit of a what?
A wingnut.
I don't know what that means.
Like, I mean, if you're an objectivist and you know you're going to lose,
Yeah,
You
but
gotta have a
you have to
certain
view it as an
there's a certain
opportunity
personality for that.
to talk to audiences,
Yeah.
participate in debates, get the word out there. So you have to have the mentality of, I'm out there. I mean, if it was easy to do, I would do it. I would have fun doing it, right? It would be fun. I mean, I was serious at some point. I was approached by somebody about running some big shot in the Republican Party to run for governor of California. And I said, if you can raise the first $50 million for me, because it'll cost $100 million. And I'm not going to raise the first 50, and I don't believe I can raise the first 50. I think that's impossible. Nobody will give me that kind of money. If you could bring me a check for $50 million, I will raise the second 50 and I will do it. And I was serious. I would have done it. It would have been fun. So so I think it has to be, you have to take the perspective. This is going to be fun no matter what. I'm probably going to lose. I'm going to create a lot of, shake things out. I'm going to create a lot of cognitive, dissonance and upset a lot of people. And, cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think Tuschinski's running as a Democrat, if I remember right, which is probably right to do in Virginia. You're not going to get anywhere with Republicans in Virginia. It's too religious. It's too anchored in Trump and in kind of the now heritage Americans. So in Democrats, maybe you've got some kind of angle you can go after. It's interesting. It's an interesting tactic. We'll see how it goes. I do not. I think it could be interesting. I'm not promoting it, but if there's somebody out there, I'm not against it. Again, I think it has to be consistent with your values and go for it.
I've got to say, the governor of Puerto Rico has got to be a lot cheaper than governor of California. Just saying.
Yeah, but if I spoke Spanish fluently, I'd actually consider it.
Yaron, what about the aspect of it of kissing babies and shaking hands all the time?
I don't mind that.
And you won't be able to travel too as much.
But yes, I won't travel. So I mean, that's fine. It would be fun, right? It would be such a blast. And kissing babies, I mean, there's worse things in life than kissing babies. And I can shake hands. I can put on the act of doing that for a while. It's an act. I'm an actor. That's what you do when you lecture. And the audiences would be larger. And yeah, I mean, if I spoke fluent Spanish, I would consider doing it in Puerto Rico. But when I first came to Puerto Rico, I think it was 3 months after I'd arrived here, I was invited to speak at some conference. I think it was a crypto conference. And I said, okay, I'll speak on how to turn Puerto Rico into the Hong Kong of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And I gave a talk on how to turn Puerto Rico into the Hong Kong of the Caribbean, basically do what Hong Kong did. And it's easy. And people were enthused. They were excited. They all told me the governor will call me. There were people there from politics, and they said, the governor will call you. You should be on some committee, some advisory board. I said, I'm happy to. I'd love to do that. I never got a call. So that's what happens with politics is, they promise, they talk, they get excited, they hear something new, but then they think about it and say, oh no, that's radical. That's crazy. Yeah. Nobody will do that. Yeah, I could see myself doing that. My wife would probably kill me, but other than that, she does not.
But what if you won? What if you won? Don't you think that? Yeah, don't you think you would do it because you know that it's a short-term thing? Because your greater value is really doing what you're doing, I think, as an intellectual. Right now.
I don't know. I mean, look at Milei. Look at how many people are paying attention to free markets because of Milei. So imagine if I won governor of Puerto Rico. And I could get away with doing stuff like Milei has gotten away.
That's true.
And imagine if Puerto Rico went from being the poorest pseudo state in the union to somewhere in the middle pack because of within 4 years because of policies I put in place, and people started to move from Orlando to Puerto Rico instead of Puerto Rico to Orlando. That is, Puerto Ricans started coming back to the island because there were so many economic opportunities here. I mean, think about what that would do to whatever career as a podcast I would have after that, right? I could write my own check for as a podcaster afterwards, in terms of the influence and the reach I could have. So no, I mean, don't dismiss politics. It's a great marketing ploy. And if you get into power and you can do as much as you can do. Now, the problem is if you can't do anything, then it's a waste, right? If you really can't do anything. But governors and presidents have a lot of power. Look at how much Trump is doing. In spite of the fact that he's not going to Congress, he's not acting in Congress or anything. Now's the time to get elected president. You can be an imperial president in the name of liberty, and reboot the whole American system. So yeah, I'm getting excited now.
No, you wouldn't win. You
I'm just
wouldn't
looking
win,
for that
Yaron.
check. What's that?
You wouldn't win. You couldn't win.
I couldn't win. I couldn't win. What's that?
I'll put in the first $5. Is
There
that
you go.
enough to get you going?
I mean, just think about how much fun it would be if I was on the stage in one of the presidential debates.
Oh,
I mean, it would completely change dynamics. I mean, Rand Paul is there, and you think, okay, Rand at least is pro free markets, but he's quiet and he's dull and he never says anything interesting and never says anything exciting, and he
He
doesn't
was
lash
terrible
out.
in those debates when he was running for president.
Yeah. Anyway, so we can fantasize. I think that's as far as it can go at this point, with me at least.
If you reconsider, I'm willing to up my bid.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Daniel. All right, Lincoln. You're still muted. Still muted. All right, let me come back to you, Lincoln. Figure out how to unmute. Let's see, maybe I can do that. Ask to unmute. I'm not sure what's going on. All right, let's see. Ryan, the fact that you guys are not on video makes it more difficult for me to keep track on who's asked and who isn't. But Ryan is here. Ryan, do we have more than one Ryan? We have more than one Ryan. So let's do Ryan Brubaker. Okay.
Hey,
Hey.
thank you for taking my question. On a previous show, I have a semantic question too. On a previous show, you were reviewing a Matt Walsh video and you were talking about like legitimate sources of pride. And this was sort of a side comment, but you said how, in reality, like a parent can't even take pride in what their children do or something along those lines. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
bring it up my
I mean,
kids.
it's you don't want to overstate it, but yes, I mean,
Yeah. Well,
your children's achievements are their achievements, not yours.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna take this to time to brag about one of my kids. I'd love to brag about both of them, but I'll just brag about one of them. So my oldest is a senior in high school, and he's about halfway through earning his private pilot's license. And about a month ago, he had his first solo flight, and my wife and I went to watch it, and forgive my language, but watching him fly, he basically took off, flew around the airport, landed, they're called touch and goes. He did about 5 or 6 of those. And but watching him doing that flight, there's like this feeling of like, hell yeah, that's my kid up there flying. And if the word isn't pride for that, like what is the word? I was querying ChatGPT and looking at a thesaurus and stuff, and the closest I came to was like admiration, but that didn't seem strong enough. And maybe it's just love. But
Well, I mean,
is there a word
it's certainly
that you
love,
use
but
besides pride, or
it's love as applied to a particular concept. I don't think I don't know that it is I don't know that pride is what captures it because it's. I mean, there's a sense that you made the kid, right? But there's a sense in which he made himself, and particularly if he's a senior.
But you're wrong. You influence the kid. It's okay.
You influence him, but he has to choose to be influenced.
Absolutely. It's his achievement, ultimately.
Yeah. So, sure, there's an element of pride, and I raised him well. That's great. But is there a direct link between I raised him well and he's doing this great flying? Maybe, maybe not. It's a reach. There's some very positive feeling that you get. It's love, it's admiration, it's a combination of those. It's just that you're pleased because he has made himself into this phenomenal human being. And I don't know what the word is what the right term would be for that. Pride implies that you made him into this phenomenal human being. And I'm just warning against that, right? Yes, you had an impact. You raised him well. That's great. But at the end of the day, it's his achievement. And so
Right.
you should feel incredibly positive at your children's achievement. Absolutely. And depressed when they fail, right? Because you love them. So you're tied to them emotionally in that way. But it's not like they
You could put it
failures are
very
your fault
negatively too.
and their successes are your fault.
You could put it negatively if you were to say, don't be delusional and think it's your achievement. You're not you're not
I would.
He's not you. But I do think
Yeah,
being happy about his achievement is
Yes,
rational.
absolutely. Absolutely should be happy about his achievement.
Yeah, one of the things you said was like, couching it in terms of like, this is your achievement I've been conscious of that even before the episode. Like,
Yeah, good.
I've been very conscious of like, when I talk about it to him, like this is your hard work, this is your achievement. But there's still that, yeah. I don't know another word for it besides pride, but it's something.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a use of pride that is separate from kind of the way we use pride as a moral principle in objectivism, and maybe we just don't have a term that captures that, so we need to use pride because it's all we got. That might be the case. So
Thank you.
I mean, the whole point of me doing that is the emphasis on they need to be proud of themselves. And the recognition is their achievement. That was the emphasis I was trying to make. Not that you shouldn't feel good when your kids do well. You absolutely should.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I just, I was trying to work out, if there's a different word than pride, but it's sort of hard to think of something.
I don't have an answer for that one. For a change. Thanks, Ryan. All right. Let's go to the other Ryan.
Hi, Yaron. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I've been working at this philosophy for about 6 years now, watching you for a long time. 2.5 years ago, I quit my job. I ran a business for a year as a consultant. On January 3rd, I'm driving to Missouri to leave Canada and live in the United States for 2 years and work, which is one of my dreams and one of my goals.
Yeah.
It could lead to a green card. Sorry?
Missouri.
Kansas City. Yeah. So it could lead to a green card. It could not. I don't know. I got to leave my family behind for 2 years. I'm going to be back to visit them. And it made me think about every couple months, somebody on the show asks why there aren't more demonstrations or public action by objectivists or by the groups. And I started to think, your response is generally it's not effective. And, Ayn Rand didn't support it and it's not practical. I've come to have a different reason, a personal reason, which is unless someone has really committed to making big changes in their lives and to taking these ideas seriously, I think it would be a waste of time. You've got better things to do. You've got better places to be. You need to focus on your life. And I almost drew the conclusion that it's almost second-handed to want to go out and demonstrate with a group. It's almost anti-individualistic. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that. I think sometimes things happen that piss you off so much that you want to find a way to express the fact that this is wrong, that it's an injustice, and I think for some of you guys, the way you express it is come on the Yaron Brook show and listen to me vent, and I do it for you in a sense. Or you support the Ayn Rand Institute, or you do something like that. But I think sometimes there's a lot of satisfaction in going out and expressing this publicly. This is a bad deal. This is wrong. Stop doing this. I don't think it's particularly effective. I don't think it's. I don't think that it is achieves much, other than to make you feel a little better after the fact. But yeah, that assumes that you already are, doing the things that you need to do to make your life within the scope of your control better. But I can imagine, I don't know, imagine if tomorrow, I don't know, Trump nationalizes CNN. I don't know, something like that, right? Yeah, I can see. I mean, this is free speech we're talking about. This is the most important thing I can imagine. More people at a rally, more people protesting, more people camping outside the White House might have an impact. And people want to act on it, and they see their whole future contingent on the success of this action. You would do it. You might also imagine a situation where the only alternative we had was revolution. Right? Risking your life, literally risking your life. Well, if things got bad enough, you can imagine a context in which you would do that. You would say, yeah, I get all that. But right now, if I don't do this, my future's gone anyway, right? I just won't have a future. So
Yeah,
it depends on the circumstances.
I think that people individually, though, aren't doing enough, and you don't need the whole system of rights to fall apart for you to get up and change your life and do something drastic.
I agree with that. I think people need to do a lot more in terms of improving their lives and making sure they're making the most of the life that they have before they get involved in superficial political activism.
A lot more personal values creation.
Yes,
Yeah.
as an example to the people around you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think at the end of the day, you have a lot more impact in just living a great life than you do in going to a protest.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Right. Who have I not? Jacob.
Hey, you're on. I
still have
was
to go
actually
back to
driving
Lincoln
back
at some
from
point. Go ahead, Jacob.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Driving back from Kansas City to St. Louis. So I know a little bit about Kansas City. if anyone
Ryan,
wants
you've
to know.
got somebody from Kansas City already. There you go.
Well, now I'm in St. Louis. But
Okay.
I was driving back and I was listening to a podcast on Patton. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said FDR's only redeeming feature, or basically only one, was how he handled the war and guided it. Is that roughly true?
I don't know if it's his only redeeming feature. Don't take everything I say.
Right, one
like
of
that.
his major
but yeah,
ones.
it's certainly a redeeming feature of his presidency, given how much bad he did.
But then, so the podcast I was listening to was on Patton and the Yalta Conference, and how FDR basically gave up most of Eastern Europe.
Yep.
And then that led to 40 plus years of the USSR siphoning off wealth and continuing their funding.
Yep.
And would you say that negates, or what I got from the podcast, and I'll have to do more research, that negates a lot of his positive traits in leading the war, is he didn't know how to end it, then it lasted 40 plus years in the future and millions of suffering. And then
the fact he wasn't, absolutely. He was terrible vis-a-vis the Soviets. He was terrible because he appointed Eisenhower to lead the assault on Europe. Eisenhower was a politician, not a real general. So he was terrible in a lot of things, but you get a lot of credit for me by saying unconditional surrender. We will do everything and anything to win this war. And it really is unconditional surrender. That's the credit I give him for. And I say that in spite of all the mistakes that were made in World War II. And the more you read about World War II, the more you realize how political it was and how just you'll get just the more you read about World War II, the angrier you'll get at Eisenhower and at FDR and all of them, Bradley and all the generals there. They're all pathetic.
And then on that, it was talking about how Patton won.
But it's even worse, like if you read about the Civil War, right? If you read about the Civil War and the generals of the North, oh my God. And until they got Grant, and really Grant was bailed out by Sherman, until you got Sherman and you unleashed Sherman, the Civil War is just dragging. And it's just, wars are tough, and it's very rare to have great generals and have the great attitude oriented around victory. It's very unusual.
I'll have to read up on those. But on that, so Patton was hearing reports of what was happening in Eastern Europe, and that he said, or the podcast was saying that was his primary drive for wanting to invade, is to liberate Eastern Europe. But that, for me, that sounded a little self-sacrificial or second-handed of him, rather than considering the position of U.S. troops and U.S. interests. And I could make an argument that, hey, by sacrificing now or by engaging the war, then you would save lives in the future and the trillions of dollars spent. That sounded, or that felt almost like a justification for it, rather than like me post history justifying it, rather than having a concrete proof of why it was in American interest. I wanted to see your thoughts there.
Doesn't sound right to me. Patton, Patton wasn't, I mean, the Soviets hadn't reached Eastern Europe before D-Day. Patton wasn't involved in D-Day. So he came with his army after D-Day had already passed. He was used as a decoy, which just tells you everything you need to know about how stupidly the war was fought, where you use Patton as a decoy and you have the incompetent generals actually invading Europe.
Their argument was he presented a report to upper leadership that, hey, in 6 weeks we could go into Prague, go in and mop up most of Eastern Europe. But it would
I mean, he was
lives.
on the board of the Czechoslovakia. He was on the board of Czechoslovakia. This is way into the war, towards the end of the war, and he telegraphed Bradley and Eisenhower. He telegraphed Eisenhower, and he basically said, I could be in Prague in 24 hours, and I can take Eastern Europe. And he didn't hear anything, and he telegraphed again. And finally, Bradley got back to him. Not even Eisenhower, because too much of a coward. Bradley got back to him, and Bradley said, "We promised Czechoslovakia to the Soviets, stand down." And but he should have done it. You're in the middle of a war. You're in the middle of a war anyway. Liberating those countries from the Nazis is part of the war, and preventing the Soviets from taking over was completely consistent with American interests at that point in time, and would have saved a lot of heartache. Later, when he was stationed in Berlin as head of the Allied forces in Western Europe, he wanted to start a war with Russia. He wanted to kick the Soviet Union out of Germany, and he was obnoxious to the Soviets and was trying to start a war. And Eisenhower and Truman had to basically fire him, or change his command and pull him out of Berlin. And it was on his way out of Berlin, and I think it was I can't remember where it was, maybe it was Paris, but he was on his way out of that command when there was a traffic accident and he got killed. And if you want to believe in any conspiracy theory, it's not a bad conspiracy theory to think that they had him killed to get an anti-communist out of the way so they could engage in whatever negotiations they wanted to do with the Soviet Union. Now, I don't believe that, but it's a much more reasonable conspiracy theory than I don't know, the Mossad killed JFK or something like that.
Well, thanks. I have another question, but I'll leave that for the future.
Sure. All right, Lincoln. Let's see if you can unmute. Real noise coming through. So your mic is not plugged in right or something like that. All right, let me go to Andrew while Lincoln tries to figure that out.
I could follow up on every question that you answered because I think the answers are so interesting. But the one I'll follow up on is, did you notice the Kantianism or the Christianity in the definition that you read of pragmatism? It said, obey. You either do the sensory knowledge or you obey principles.
Yeah, I mean, that's pragmatism. That's the Kantian nature of pragmatism, yes.
You obey, the notion of obeying principles is interesting, I think,
Yeah. It's your duty to act on principle.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll follow up on is I think that a logical inference that you're making about the issue of pride and children and your own children is there's a child rearing tip in there. that I think is implied by what you say, which is tell your child, inculcate in your child that his achievement is his achievement, and that he should feel proud of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the emphasis I want to emphasize.
Right, because I think that parents are not doing it that way. I think in the majority, what they're doing is they're saying, "We feel proud of you. We feel proud of you," over and over again.
Exactly.
And it's like it's a bad premise.
Yep.
You know, so you know, I think that, you know, I think it's important, actually.
Yep.
But anyway, let me ask you my question, which is a history question. What do you think are the essential causes that led to the Dark Ages?
God.
Either historically or philosophically or both.
I mean, a combination of the complete fragmentation of the Roman Empire, due to kind of the various, they had conquered lands which had tribal allegiance. There were there were barbaric tribes on the periphery. There was just too much mayhem. It led to the breakdown of the empire, which ultimately led to anarchy, which is anti-civilizational inherently. And, you know, you could argue about why they got so weak as to fragment like that. And I would say that is partially philosophical, partially geopolitical. But
was there an increase in statism?
Yeah, but there was an increase in statism. It was partially, I mean, look, it was an empire, so it was always statist. But there was philosophically, the empire became the philosophy of the empire, you know, was dominated by either Christianity or various forms of Stoicism or cynicism. Basically, a divorce from reality, a search for meaning outside of reality and outside of self. That led to hedonism and particularly in the upper classes, hedonism and to some extent nihilism, the enjoyment of gladiators ripping each other to shreds and lions eating Christians, which was a very short period of time when the lions ate the Christians. But the persecution of Christians didn't last very long, in other words. But so I think it's the philosophy of the bad philosophy that they got from the Greeks, which was cynicism and ultimately led to hedonism and nihilism, and the combination with that of Christianity as being the only positive, together with real geopolitical upheavals militarily, as their own armies got weaker and weaker, and a complete fragmentation of the empire. Fragmentation, you know, the empire was rich partially because, you know, it facilitated trade. It had one system of law over vast periods of land. And once that fragmented, trade disappeared, production disappeared. You know, money disappears from Western Europe once Rome falls. Sophisticated pottery, any kind of industry, any kind of artisanship that's sophisticated disappears because it becomes one big violent hellhole. Because all that's left is violence to arbitrate disputes. The empire held back the violence, so, you know, and once it collapsed, you got a Dark Ages, and it took a long time for Europe to coalesce around a new set of ideas that could lead it to be peaceful again and to be some extent united and to see production and you know, start up again. And that doesn't happen until, I mean, the Renaissance is the beginning of it, but it doesn't really happen until the Enlightenment in the 19th century.
So you put cynicism first. Would you put skepticism before cynicism?
Yeah, skepticism leads to cynicism. Skepticism is the fundamental.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, let's see if Lincoln has his mic problems fixed. All right, say something. All I get is noise. Sorry. All right. All right, let's I'm gonna do, I got everybody, I think. Let me do some super chats and then we'll come back to the panel. All right, James. Does anxiety often amount to the undertaking of creating scenarios that will only ever exist in your head that are adverse to the outcome you want? We suffer more in imagination than ever in reality. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that anxiety has to be perceived in you're anxious because you're not sure about an outcome. You're anxious, when you're not, when you're, I'm not sure anxiety is like fear. But I think it's often exacerbated by our imagination. But I think if you're watching, take your kids, right? If they're in a race and you want your kid to win and it's really really close and you feel anxiety about whether they'll win or not. No, I mean that's real. You're anxious. You're not sure. You're not sure of an outcome, and you're little. It expresses your worry about the outcome being not in your favor, and that might not just be in your imagination. It might be real. So I don't think anxiety is necessarily an imaginary thing. Again, I don't think anxiety or anything like that is a negative. It's a signal to you about something of concern, and then you have to evaluate. What am I going to do about it? How do I deal with the situation? So it's true that we can make it a lot worse, and in that sense, I agree with you that we suffer more in imagination than ever in reality. You often are super anxious about a meeting, about a conversation with your boss, and then when you actually have it, it goes it goes much better than you expected, or it goes worse than you expected. It could go either way, right?
Rand had a great
But the worrying about it in advance, the thinking about it, the worrying, the imagination doesn't often help the outcome. Although it could lead you to strategies about how to deal with it in a better way. So anxiety is just a signal that there's something that you're worried about, that you're fearful about, that needs addressing. All right. Thanks, James. Let's see, Michael. When did Francisco d'Ancona mean? What did he mean when he said, "Your manners have never been glued to you too"? Let's say, "Your manners have never been glued to you too solidly. You lose them in an emergency, and that's the time when one needs them most." I mean, it's a good question. What did he mean by that? I've never thought of that. That's the time when you need them most. I think it's really that in an emergency, you need to stay rational. But part of staying rational is not to lose your respect for the people around you, not to lose, the things that make you civilized, the things that make you a good human being. People use emergencies, use panic situations to excuse a descent into kind of a barbarism or descent away from the civilized, away from manners. And he is saying, no, you always need to remember you're a human being, and the value of civilization and the value that other people might represent to you. So, I don't have a better explanation than that. I'd have to read the whole scene and remind myself. It's been a while since I read Atlas Shrugged. I should probably reread it soon. Clark, thank you, Michael. Your attitude is very flippant and nonchalant about cutting off immediate family members like parents or siblings. What's the point of having children if you won't have a relationship with them when they're adults? I mean, my attitude is not flippant about it, but it's you have to be rational about it. You have to be realistic about it. So, of course, the whole purpose of raising children, the whole purpose you have, your long-term purpose would have, is to have a relationship. But that
Can I
is not
tell you why
happening.
this guy isn't honest in this question? Because
Yeah.
he
Don't
says
attribute honesty or dishonesty
no,
to
no.
people
Like,
who are
I'll give you my
questioning
evidence.
the
I'll give you my evidence. He said that you are for cutting off family. You never said
I'm
to cut off.
nonchalant about it. Not that
You
I'm
are not
for it.
nonchalant about it.
I am in relative to the cultural attitude about the sanctity of it. So I get what he's saying. I don't attribute it to dishonesty.
Okay, you don't agree with me.
I don't.
I think there's something to it.
All right. I don't think so. I think relative to the way the culture views it. So yes, it's absolutely your long-term goal, but if that goal is not being achieved, you have to be realistic and you have to act accordingly. And you can't be deluded about it, and you have to be selfish. You have to figure out, the past is the past. You might invest it in a relationship a lot, in a marriage, in a friendship, in a sibling, in whatever, a huge amount. But I'm a finance guy. I believe in sunk costs. The past is over. The past doesn't exist. The past is finished. What matters is the present and the future. And you have to make an evaluation today about the prospects for the future and determine the nature of your relationship based on that. And I wouldn't be flippant about it. I don't think you should do that lightly. I don't think you should do that easily in any relationship. I think you should do it rationally, taking into account the real objective prospects moving into the future. But the reason I come across flippant is it's like my point about pride. I'm trying to undo a cultural bias. There's too big of a cultural bias in favor of sustaining relationships of blood. Blood is thicker than water, all kinds of stuff like that. And elevating that to some kind of supernatural, mystical thing. And I'm trying to say, no, it's a relationship, and you have to view it as, is it in my interest or isn't it in my interest? Long term, given all the facts as I know them.
But people are taking you literally, I think, some people. And
it's okay.
I will just say that Rand had a very positive, like, for Rand parents, if you know about her history, her as a person, she was very respectful of the parent-child relationship in practice. She did not think that somebody should detach from their parents and cut them off easily.
I don't think anybody should do it easily, but again, I think that.
But you are 100%.
The much more prevalent problem.
Yeah.
The much more prevalent problem is the people who latch on and hang on to relationships when those relationships bring them no value. That is the bigger problem. So I'd be much more concerned about that than the other way around. All right, Molten Splendor said, I just sent you 2 interesting links to articles, one about Michelangelo as an architecture for fortresses, and the other is about a Vermeer on exhibit in Palm Beach, a short drive from Fort Myers. And West Palm Beach. Well, West Palm Beach is not a short drive from Fort Myers. I know enough to know that that's, a 3-hour drive, something like that. But I appreciate that. There's a Vermeer at the W Hotel. God, can you imagine the insurance, the cost of insurance of having that painting at a hotel? And it's super humid there. Yeah, I'm a little upset. I mean, they should send that Vermeer back to, I don't know. That's great. It's I'm going to look it up because I'm curious what Vermeer that is. and where they got it from. Thank you for both articles. I'll check them out. Molten Splendor. I've searched and cannot find your recent podcast where you show Megyn Kelly ranting and providing details of a specific torture that she believes should be applied. Can you recall the podcast? God, I have a vague recollection of talking about something like that. I can't remember what it is. Anybody remember what I
kind of remember, I think, what they're referring to, which is like you covered her saying that she wishes that the boat, people in the boats would suffer and, you know, like to the last breath, that kind of thing.
That's right. The question is, what podcast did I say that in?
That would be, I'd be super impressed if you remembered that. And I don't.
Well, no, I don't remember what I did yesterday. You want me to remember that? But I'm going to look at my live shows. Let's see if we can figure it out from the titles. Individualism, let's go to Greenland, new weapons. I don't think it's that. That's not it. That's not it. Bondi hero, murderer, Doge, trade, stagnation. It's not that. Yeah, God, what would it be? What would I have?
The problem is, Yaron, you've talked about Megyn Kelly a lot lately.
Yeah, but this one was a main story, so I would have titled it with something. Okay, I'll ask Angela, because Angela secretly has a secret project that she's doing where all my latest shows are being transcribed, and there's we're doing something with AI with it all, and there's stuff on, so she could probably do a keyword search, a text search on Megyn Kelly. And I'll get back to you, Molten Splendor, on that. So I'll tell you which one it was. But yes, that was them. Megyn Kelly saying not only should they kill them all, she hopes they kill them slowly and that they bleed out in the ocean slowly and in pain, yelling and complaining. I mean, it was brutal.
Talk about bloodlust.
She was really expressing significant bloodlust there. Yes. I would not want to befriend Megyn Kelly. She scares me. All right. Let's see. But that's that's Fox, right? That's Fox. I'm looking at the list of people on here, and I think this is true every time. But you notice that there's not a single woman on the.
I was wondering what happened to Deborah.
Deborah's kind of faded out, and Jennifer.
She was a very good question.
Yeah, Deborah hasn't showed up in a while. She still supports the show and everything, but she hasn't shown up for one of these. She got married, so she's not as active. But
I thought because of the last time, maybe she and you and Jason Ryan gotten a little dust up about male female.
Yeah. I don't think she's not coming because of that, but maybe, who knows? I'll ask her next time I see her.
I hope not. I mean, it was a good-natured argument.
She comes to Ocon, so I saw her this summer. Jennifer says she was late today. That's why. But yeah, there's no women. I mean, I have, YouTube is supposed to be a platform that's male dominated. All right, let's do Lincoln, and then I just saw that somebody joined. Robert joined, so we'll do Lincoln and Robert, and then we'll go back to our list. Lincoln, does it work now? Can't hear you. God, something's going on there. All right, let me go to Robert. Robert. I assume you joined. You had something you wanted to say.
Sort of. I just wanted to say, let me throw this at you. Now my camera's messing up. Here we go. So as long as the audio works.
Yep.
There are people who've got it harder in life. Obvious example of this is poor people. Kid works 2 jobs to work his way through college, gets his college degree, graduates. I've run into objectivists and friends of mine who kind of shudder, who are uneasy with the idea that poor kid who had to work so much harder to get his degree deserves more credit than the wealthy student who did all the same work in college, and he deserves all the credit of the degree he got. But they don't want to acknowledge that that poor kid deserves a certain amount of admiration for the extra things he had to do to get where he got. And they seem to feel like if we do that, then suggesting that, well, then something should be done, or we should sacrifice for him, or the government should do something. And none of that has to be assumed just because you're willing to say somebody who had to work twice as hard to get something deserves twice as much moral credit, or just admiration. Forget moral credit. I don't want to make it that serious. Does that sound right to you? And is that kind of related to some of these other conversations about, well, we're trying to make a point here and we can't get distracted with that other stuff? Does that kind of resonate or make any sense?
I don't see the connection.
I don't see the connection, but
I'm getting an echo. You have a mic on?
Yeah, let me mute myself while you're talking here.
So no, absolutely, that child deserves, extra admiration. That is, absolutely, the fact that he had a harder go at it is a much greater reflection on character than the kid who had it easy. Yes, they both achieved the same thing, but one exhibits a certain level of character that it's not that the other is a negative. It's just he hasn't had the opportunity to exhibit that character, and the poor kid did, and therefore he gets moral credit, but he gets admiration. Absolutely. So I have no problem with assigning moral credit. There's no question that there are circumstances under which it's harder to shape your soul in a positive way, and there are other circumstances where it's easier to shape your soul in a positive way. And overcoming adversity is admirable. It's that word, you know what I mean? It's something to admire, and it's heroic. Which we wouldn't say a hero is somebody who overcomes adversity and achieves something. Somebody who overcomes the same adversity, somebody who achieves the same thing but doesn't overcome adversity, great, but it's not a hero, right? The heroism comes from overcoming adversity. So absolutely. I mean, if those two applicants applied for a job with me, I'd lean towards the poor kid who hustled to get there because it reflects something that I don't know about let's call him the rich kid. I just don't know how he will deal with adversity. I know this kid will deal with adversity well. So all else the same, right? The fact that one had to overcome more to achieve something says something about his character that I find admirable, that it would encourage me to make a decision in his favor. So I'm going even further than you did. You're muted now.
Sorry about that. The connection is nature and nurture, and people wanting to say, well, we're objectivists. We don't care about nature. We don't care about nurture. We don't care how someone was brought up. We don't care what their background was. They've got free will.
But that's ridiculous. I mean, nature has an impact, so does nurture have an impact. Free will is not, it's not in a vacuum. And when you have free will, you might want to mute because echoing.
Oh, sorry.
When we have free will, when you apply your mind, some people, when they apply their mind, have a plethora of choices, lots of opportunities, lots of different things they could do, and it's just waiting there to be picked up. And other people, when they apply their mind and apply their free will, have very limited choices. They could join a gang, or they could go up against everybody in their little community and go to school in spite of that and be harassed by everybody. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And so you can't ignore what somebody has to go through in order to achieve what he achieves. Now, the achievement is the same. As you said, they both get a degree. One shouldn't get an A because he tried harder. They both get A's. But in terms of admiring, in terms of character and admiration of the character, absolutely how you got to where you got matters and makes a difference.
Excellent. I think it's just a great point to bring out because, again, maybe you're not seeing this the way I do, but especially younger objectivists, but even some older folks who want to say, well, but that would lead to, participation trophies and egalitarianism. And no, it's not. It's just one, when you judge somebody, you got to judge everything.
I just
All right,
don't.
thank you. I
I just
appreciate
don't socialize enough with objectivists to get into these conversations.
it. Very good.
I'm too much of a loner, I guess. Okay. But yeah, it sounds familiar in the sense that, yeah, I can see how young objectivists would make that case, but it's wrong. It's wrong.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Let's see. We're going to start this time with Daniel.
Yaron, I wonder if you're planning on doing some sort of a year-end summary on the economy, the markets, and where you think things might go in 2026. And I have to preface this by saying back before Trump got elected this time, after hearing all the terrible things you were saying, I bought a bunch of calls on gold, got in at under $3,000 on a lot. And so I'm looking for the next big trade out of you.
Wow. That is amazing. Next time you do that, can you text me and let me know? God.
I was embarrassed to tell you the truth. I was embarrassed thinking I'm probably
who can imagine gold at 4,500? I mean, it's just unimaginable to me, and I don't understand it. And I'm sorry. I know there's a bunch of gold bugs out there who think I'm a complete ignoramus because they get it, they understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me from an economics perspective. I don't get it. It's not compensating for inflation. Inflation's price increases. It's not reflective of increase in M2. It's just out of nowhere. So I don't.
Why do they think you're missing something obvious, like these commenters?
Well, because they believe gold is money. There's a sense in which it's implicitly money, and it going up, immediately suggests that the value of the dollar has declined significantly, and all prices and all wages should be denominated in gold.
In other words, doom.
If you did that, that would mean that your income has just declined in terms of purchasing power, in terms of the value of the dollar by 50% over the last year or so. And that just is insane to me. That's just not true. I remember that it used to be said that an ounce of gold could buy a suit. And so when an ounce of gold was $45, that's how much a suit cost approximately. And a nice suit cost $450 when gold went up to 450. And it kind of tracked. And for a while there, yeah, an ounce of gold could buy a suit. But what the hell? $4,500 suits? Give me a break, particularly if you can get them cheap from Asia. You can get suits have gone cheaper, not more expensive, and certainly not that expensive. So let's say a suit now is a nice suit, the same kind of nice suit that you could get once for $450. Maybe it's $1,500. I don't know of a suit that costs $4,500. I'm sure there is. I'm not saying there isn't a suit that costs $4,500. I'm sure Chanel or Louis Vuitton or something like that. But it's just absolutely not true that an ounce of gold buys the same today as it did 40 years ago. That's just it buys so much more today. Gold has gone up in real terms, in terms of purchasing power. It's gone up dramatically, and I don't know why they think what they think. I haven't got into it. As I said, I'm a loner, so I haven't got into a debate with them. But it would be interesting to try to figure that out.
They're pretty harsh with you.
Yes, people generally, when they disagree with me, they don't disagree with me gently. They feel like
more respectfully. Like, I mean, there is a way to respectfully disagree with somebody.
They feel like if they're going to disagree with me, they have to make clear that my faults are, irredeemable, and yeah, it's brutal out there in the world of social media. Particularly if they're anonymous, if they don't put their name on the post, then they're even more brutal.
Yeah, they're name callers.
Yeah, but yeah. So
of course our president is a name caller too. So
yeah. So January 31st show, I will do a section on how the economy has been and where I think it's going. I have to say that I haven't called it very well in the past, right? I mean, I've been calling recession for a long time, and it hasn't happened. I thought there would be a recession during the Biden term. I think I don't understand the latest GDP reading and where that is coming from, and what's generating it. And I don't understand where the market is at this point. It really does feel like 1999 or beginning of 2000, and but I don't have the courage to sell everything and to short the market. I wish I had that. If I had still had my hedge fund, I might be doing it, but I don't have the courage. My attitude is I'm just going to stay diversified. It's worked for the last 50 years. It'll work for the next. But yeah, I wish I'd bought some call options in gold or in the market for that matter. Call options on Nvidia would have done pretty well too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But that's the thing; it doesn't make sense that gold goes up that much and Nvidia goes up that much.
Right.
Unless the Nvidia is pure monetary inflation, right? What's driving the Nvidia stock is monetary inflation, and gold is predicting massive depreciation in the value of the dollar over the next few years. And that means we'll see price inflation go up dramatically in the next few years. Maybe that's going to happen. I just don't see it. I see much more likely Nvidia collapsing and losing, I don't know, 40, 50% of its value. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. I'd be pretty shocked if inflation was double digits. CPI, consumer inflation, double digits anytime in the foreseeable future.
Right. Thank you. Looking forward to the show.
Thanks. All right, Ryan. Ryan, okay, we'll go Bubek. I was thinking Ward, but that's fine.
I can go. I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan. You're on my screen next, so that's all.
This question is related to all this discussion. What do you think about the prospect of the tariff rebate checks mimicking stimulus checks from COVID? And as a second part, do you think that the impacts of that sort of stimulus, which is what it is really, would have the same impacts to the economy or to inflation or to other metrics as the COVID checks, or has that already been priced into people's markets? Like people don't know what's going to happen. How can you price that in?
Yeah, I don't think it's priced. I don't think anybody expects the checks to ever materialize. I think it's a fantasy. It's one of those lies that Trump keeps saying, and it'll never happen.
Bessent just said it again.
Who did?
Yeah,
Bessent.
like every 2 days.
Bessent.
I mean, ex-Secretary of War, what the hell does he know?
No, Bessent, Todd Bessent.
Bessent. Okay. I don't know why they're saying it. Maybe their plan is to try to bribe the American people before the next election before the congressional election in 2026. They have to get Congress to pass it, so it would have to be in a budget resolution next year. We're running these massive deficits. I can't imagine it happening. I just can't imagine it happening. Now, if it does, then it really depends. It depends what the Fed does, right? So you could imagine them, basically issuing all of us $2,000 checks, and the Fed sucking up $2,000 per person money out of the economy at the same time. So it's called immunizing. So they immunize the effect of it by taking the money out of the economy, by buying, selling a bunch of bonds in their portfolio. That is possible. So I really, but if Trump gets his guy into the Fed, it's unlikely that would happen, because that would probably also, if the Fed starts selling bonds, that'll drive interest rates up. So
I know it would be a slow drip in, but what if the tariffs get overruled and all the $100 billion, it's a different scale. that all that gets sent back to the manufacturers and importers. Would that also be an inflation driver?
No, because it's going to be spent anyway, right? It's just a question of who's spending it. It's the government or them. They're not taking any additional debt out. I mean, interest rates would change. Interest rates would reflect it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. I don't think that's inflationary in the same sense as printing money out of nowhere and distributing it. I need it. I'll think about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I haven't given it any thought, because I think it's just something that these guys are saying to make a conversation, but I don't think there's any way that it could become a realistic thing. And I think the Supreme Court is going to rule against Trump on the tariffs.
They're trying to hype up the electorate, don't you think, Yaron? They're just trying to hype people up, regardless of whether they're going to deliver on the promise.
Yeah, but the election is far away enough in the future that people will say, "But why haven't you delivered it on it yet?" So hyping it up now is a little early. They should have done it in 6 months. They should basically say, they should have said in 6 months, if you give me a Republican Congress, I'll give you the checks. But now is a little early that people will say, why haven't you delivered? You've had
they're stupid.
Yeah, what's new? I mean, I need to think about what Jacob said, if that makes a difference, if it comes directly to consumers, it goes through the companies in terms of its effect on prices. I mean, the thing about what happened during COVID is that it was basically completely, they basically borrowed a huge amount of money, which was monetized by the Fed because there wasn't enough of a market to actually borrow all that money. It was monetized by the Fed. That is, the Fed created money so that they could and then they pitched it directly to consumers who then went out and spent it. And so you had an immediate effect of an increase in demand without, supply catching up and prices have to go up. It's not true that every stimulus has that same effect. For example, if you give it to Walmart, it doesn't quite filter through the economy in a way that raises prices in the same way as you give it to every household. It doesn't have the same impact on prices. It might smooth it out over the longer run, and I'm not sure it would be monetized. I don't know what the Fed is going to do. It's going to be interesting to see what the Fed does over the next year. That will really determine what happens over the next year is what the Fed's mandate is once a Trump appointee is running the Fed.
Is there any doubt it's going to be whatever Trump wants?
There is some doubt.
Okay.
There is some doubt. I mean, he's going to try to make sure that the person he nominates is somebody who will do what he wants, but who knows?
I guess we should just buy gold in the meantime.
I don't know. How do you buy gold at 4,500? God.
You buy platinum, not gold or silver.
Silver's at all-time highs as well, and completely irrationally so, at least from my perspective. I don't know. Maybe you should buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's cheap. It's only 87,000. It was 124,000 not that long ago. So there you go. There's upside. All right, Steve.
There are other possibilities for gold and Nvidia both being at all-time highs. So someone mentioned Michelangelo. Huh?
What? Meaning what?
I mean, there's like a wide, if you look at gold flows, the biggest buyers are retail. It's central banks. I think it says more about, I think it says more about the potential weaponization of the US dollar than it does anything about inflation.
I just don't know, what these central banks are going to do with the gold. Because they're not going to go on a gold standard. That is for certain. And
no. I think they would use it for bilateral settlement.
I don't think that'll ever happen. I mean, ever is a long time, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, because it's yeah.
Would you
It-
say
it-
it's irrational to buy gold at this price?
No, I don't think it's irrational. I mean,
Why
it's
not?
it's irrational for me to buy gold at this price because I don't get it. But if you get it, then do it. I mean, I don't have all the knowledge in the world on these things. Steve.
It's difficult because like people are worried like it's 2000, but it also could be 1995, right? Like in 1995, there was a long way to run, and even if you look at like
stock market, in terms of stock market, yes.
Yeah.
And it could be 1995, although it's unlikely because valuations are much more like 1999 in terms of price to book, PE, forward PE, backward PE, however you want to value it. It doesn't look like 95. It looks much more like 99. But I'm not saying it is because it could, valuations could go a lot higher. And the upside of AI could be a lot higher than the upside of internet, right? So yeah, I don't know. I know I don't understand that. I know, but I didn't understand 99 either, and I failed to make any money off of that one as well. So I bought put options in Amazon. Too soon.
A few months ago, so someone mentioned Michelangelo.
Yeah.
A few months ago, either you or someone on the chat recommended that I read Agony and the Ecstasy, which was an absolutely amazing book.
Isn't it amazing?
I'm gonna go back and see more of Michelangelo's stuff.
Yeah.
A whole new appreciation for what it took to like make the Sistine Chapel. After that, relating to another book that you recommended a couple of years ago that I read, which was Christendom. You get these people that come on, and I hear it, like I listen to the podcast, so I hear like it in the questions, like why aren't we making more progress in objectivism, and what are we going to do in like 10 years? And I think that book gave me a real appreciation for the time scale that like an intellectual movement can take, because that book starts 300 years into Christianity, right?
Yep.
And it ends 1,000 years later, right? Like it took really 1,300 years for Christianity to, conquer Europe. I'm not saying that this will take 1,300 years, but like it feels like saying where are we going to be in 10, 20, 50 years seems like really the wrong time scale to be thinking about. I've thought about this, Andrew. I'm not convinced that just having Zoom or the internet is like necessarily going to help us, because that seems like a neutral technology.
No, man, you're wrong about that. You're being cynical. It's actually going to help us, but I do agree with you as on your fundamental point that like it is going to take longer than a lot of people think.
Yeah. It's sort of a belief I hold. I was going to ask you, Ron, like, how do you think about like these time scales? Because it just strikes me that like even Christianity was wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it still was able to win out over, other things in its day. And if I was like being like optimistic, I'd be like, hey man, if we could have like some of the mysticism crushed in a couple hundred years, like we'll be just way better off. And that seems like a much more attainable goal than like we're going to be living in this laissez-faire capitalist society, voluntary taxes.
Yeah. I mean, I've been an objectivist for almost 50 years. It's a little scary to say that. Like I read Atlas Shrugged 48 years ago. Is that right? In 1977, right? So I read Atlas Shrugged in 1977. So it's almost 50 years. And so, yeah, I mean, things, from the perspective of progress in objectivism, wow, I mean, a huge amount of progress has happened. From the perspective of changing the world, almost nothing's happened, right? So it's not going to be 10 years. It's not going to be 20 years. You should think in terms of, 50 to 100 to several hundred years in terms of progress. Christianity also had the huge benefit of the Roman Empire basically making it the state religion. And even in spite of that, it took hundreds of years after that to solidify his hold on the West. and it was challenged. Now, Christianity's false. So that is a detriment. That right? That it should take them longer, given that they're false. But then again, everything else around them were false. So everything was false. It was just a matter of false ideas battling each other. You would think that a true philosophy, or philosophy that is moving us certainly towards reality and objectivity, would spread faster. But given how entrenched false ideas are, and given how anti-intellectual so many people are, and given how many people are at the missing link stage, kind of the perceptual level, I just don't see how it happens in less than 50 to 100 years. I mean, I used to be more optimistic in that sense, and have become more, I think, realistic. So I used to argue with Leonard, but Leonard, as usual, is right. So.
And do you view the internet as a net positive or a net negative?
It's definitely a net positive because the access to information and ideas has to benefit us. It doesn't hurt us. The reality is that we don't have to write out in script the Aristotle's books, and we're not going to lose the books, and everything's online. You can access everything. That has to be a net benefit. But how much it helps to shorten it, does it shorten it for 1,300 years to 600 years to 300 years? In any case, we're talking about a long period of time. We're not talking about a decade or two. I always thought that by the end of my life, I'd like to see the beginnings of a positive change. And I still would like to see that, but I'm more skeptical now that I will. I figure I've got 20... Okay, let me make it 30 years. Just we'll be optimistic. 30 years. Maybe.
Didn't you give a lecture on being optimistic, like a big lecture at OCON?
Yeah, but
But you
not irrationally.
That was a while ago. Maybe
not irrationally so.
Would you update that conclusion?
No.
Oh,
you should be optimistic. Depends on what. In terms of changing the world, there's no reason to be optimistic. And I don't think that was my conclusion at the talk, that I was optimistic about changing the world. Change yourself.
As chairman of ARI, how has this, like, you're shifting, you're thinking about different time scales. Like, how has that evolved what you think, or how you've influenced the strategy? I don't want you to say anything you don't want to, but I'm curious about that.
I don't think it's really shifted the strategy much, because the strategy has always been long-term, and long-term could mean decades or centuries. It doesn't really matter for that respect, right? So the long-term strategy has always been get people to read Ayn Rand and train intellectuals, because intellectuals ultimately change the culture, right? Ayn Rand being the chief intellectual, so you want people reading her, and then train as many intellectuals as you can and get them out there. I think what I've discovered, and this is why I think it's going to take longer, is that getting people to read Ayn Rand, it's not that hard, but particularly as the culture deteriorates and education deteriorates, what they get out of reading Ayn Rand becomes less and less. That is, it changes fewer and fewer people actually reading the books. And then it turns out that training intellectuals is super difficult. Much, much more difficult than I would have expected.
But it seems like ARI has really honed in on focusing in on that element of it, which is training new intellectuals. Like, I see a different intensity of focus on that in the last couple of years. With
partially because there's somebody to train. But yes, I think that's right. But it's still hard. Harder than I think people appreciate or people understand. It's really, I mean, objectivism, you could perceive it as easy in a sense. Yeah, it all makes sense. I can apply this to my life. But then to integrate it as an intellectual, and to apply it as an intellectual, and to apply it consistently intellectual, and to be able to write and speak about it, and then to be able to write and speak in a way that has an impact out there in the world, it's really, really hard, and it's hard to train people to do it.
But it's the only answer, right?
It's the only answer. So it's all you can do. Yep. Keep doing it. Sorry, Steve, no, not a satisfying answer, but
I'm satisfied.
That's what it is. Okay, good, good. Randy.
Yeah, I've been using Chat GTP for different things, and I've been very impressed with their answers and so on. But are there other sites that you think are just as good or more useful, or have you been using them?
I think they're all really good. They have a little bit of a different attitude. Grok is pretty good on some things. That's the Twitter, the X one. Gemini, which is Gemini Google? Is that right?
Gemini is Google.
Gemini is Google, and then there's one other one that is
Claude.
What's that?
Yeah.
Claude?
Claude Code, Anthropic.
Anthropic. I was thinking of Anthropic. Yeah, I think they're all good. ChatGPT, I think, is comes across as the most natural. Grok, I worry because Elon Musk runs it, so it has its biases. I find it fascinating because it's sometimes really, really. That's right. Anthropic is Claude. Okay, that's what you guys were saying, Claude. It's sometimes really good and really satisfying, and sometimes it's stupid. And it's so obvious that, yeah, I mean, all it can really do is regurgitate what's out there in terms of information. It can and it can't separate what's true and what's not. I have to often guide it away from sources which I don't trust, like Wikipedia, for example. I often tell it, don't use Wikipedia and give me an answer. And the answer shifts. It changes because it's weighting the different things differently because Wikipedia is now not part of the set. It's fascinating to play around with it. I think it does a really good job with objectivism. And I think that's because
I would recommend Copilot, which gives you a choice of 5 different types of algorithms. One of the 5 is GTP, but there are 4 others. And depending on what your interest is and which algorithm you think will do the better job on it, you have your choice.
Cool. Yeah, I'll try that out. But I'm super impressed with the understanding of objectivism, understanding in quotation marks. And I think the reason is that it's being trained on all available public information, and there's a lot of stuff out there, good stuff on objectivism, and our critics haven't written that much, and the bad objectivists, if you want to call them that, haven't written that much. And there's just a ton of Ayn Rand, straight Ayn Rand available on the web. There's a ton of, ARI stuff available on the web. So I'm pretty impressed when you ask it a question, how would Ayn Rand view this and this? It gives good answers. So it has this skeptical bent,
Do you have any doubt that it's going to revolutionize business?
No, I've said it's going to be huge, and I don't know that LLMs is. I mean, I'm pretty. I don't know that LLM is the final word in AI. I mean, there's a lot of other types of algorithms that people are looking at. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with. But yeah, it's definitely going to revolutionize the way we do work that we do. It's going to revolutionize the way doctors do what they do, biotech stuff gets done. I mean, a lot of things are going to change dramatically.
I've had some experience with just setting my CPAP machine. I try different settings, and then I ask Chat GPT when I'm having problems with the setting, and she suggests another setting that works. And she goes through all that analysis and the input to them, and she footnotes it that it's the CPAP machine manufacturer that gave her the information. So it's really interesting how that it is diagnosed.
She scans their website and pulls the information from their website.
Yeah.
And if you're asking a question that's been asked before, it will have an answer. If you ask a question that's completely new, I'm not sure the answer is going to be a good one.
Yeah, my daughter's a computer geek. She's a software designer, and she says, check but verify.
Yeah.
Certainly,
okay, thank you.
certainly in designing electronic circuits, what they call ASICs, there are literally millions of pages of documentation out there about all these tiny details about what is done with transistors and what's legal, what's not, and so forth. And it's a tremendous tool for just going through PDFs and saying, I'm looking for some specific information. Please find this.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's got to revolutionize the way so much gets done. And you know, maybe the market is pricing the value of all that already, you know, and in that case, maybe it is 1995. You know, I'm still in the market. I'm not out. So I'm certainly hoping it's 95. And let me know when it's 99 so I know to sell.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks,
much. Those
Andy.
are very good answers from everybody.
Right. All right, Jacob.
With the new year coming up, the wife and I were looking to build our budget, and we may relocate, like I was saying, to Utah. So as part of it is my work has a program where if you relocate with them and you sell within 30 days, they give you 3% of the cash value of your house. And I'll probably stay in Utah for about 5 years. And then if you sell under what you bought it for, up to $50,000, they cover what you like, cover the difference. So
Really?
the thought, yeah. So the thought was we're trying to settle on what.
You're breaking up there, Jacob.
Dollar amount of how.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You've lost coverage.
Can
Well,
you
we
just
come
come
back
back
to
to me?
you. Yeah, let me come back to you. All right, Adam.
I would like to recommend another Korean TV series.
All right.
This one is called Dr. Romantic, and the English spelling is just DR period space romantic. And the theme is the danger of politically controlled medicine. Because South Korea has a system like the British or the Canadians, where essentially medicine is under complete government control unless you're very wealthy. And there's a conflict between the doctors who are climbing the bureaucratic political ladder and making their decisions on the basis of what will the government ministry like. And there are doctors who are practicing real scientific medicine. And the conflict between the two is the central conflict in the series, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Cool. I'll check it out. Netflix?
No, it's on Viki.
Okay. Yep.
Rakuten Viki.
Yep. Viki. Yeah, I know that. Okay, cool. I'll check it out. Thank you, Adam. Let's see. Who have I not gone another time? Ryan Brubaker. Oh, and Jacob is back. Okay, Jacob. Wait a second, Ryan. Let's do Jacob.
Okay, no problem.
Yep. So there's a unique benefit of buying a larger house, knowing that when you sell, you get an extra amount back. I was wanting to get your perspective on should we want to buy a good house, whatever that is, but should we lean more towards the higher valuation of a house, knowing that you can get in 3 years an extra $10,000-$15,000, or is it not worth the risk, and how to evaluate that?
I mean, it really depends on the housing market in Utah, and I don't know what it's like. I don't know if how high prices are. Is it Salt Lake?
It would be North Salt Lake, Ogden. Most of the houses are new builds. 3 bed, maybe 4 bed, 2 to 3 bath is about 400 or 500 to 700,000?
I'd say buy a house that you love. Find a house that you really like rather than try to play the financial game and try to speculate about what's going to happen in 3 years. Get a house you can enjoy living in for 3 years. If it's expensive, you've got a little bit of a cushion because you've got that price guarantee. If it's a little cheaper, you're giving up that cushion, who cares, because you're going to enjoy the house anyway. So I'd focus on that rather than trying to do financial engineering.
Okay. Yeah. After living in a condo in St. Louis, we're like, we want a house we love. But the question is, do we have a little bit of flexibility in income after mortgage, or would we go a little tighter on the budget?
I mean, I think you should decide that based on the kind of, the kind of life you want to live rather than about what will happen in 3 years. So again, make those calculations regarding how much disposable income do you want to have after mortgage payments to go out and to travel and to do all that stuff, and then work backwards from that rather than forget about the house as an investment or as a source of income. Think about how much money do you want? How much money do you want in order to live on a day-to-day basis? That should be.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. And Ryan, finally, we get to Ryan Brubaker. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the best quotes from the Fountainhead is when Rourke tells Tui he doesn't think of him. And if I explain the context in which I'm asking this question, we might get into another discussion on family relationships and being flippant about them. So I'm going to ask about it in your context. So I assume for your daily shows, you put in a couple hours or whatever of work and going through the news and reading all these, stupid Trump quotes and Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson and whoever else.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than 2 hours and a couple of hours.
Okay. However, 2 hours is probably too long to go through all that kind of junk. But
no, it takes me a lot more than that to go over it.
Okay. Well, no, I'm saying it's probably painful to have to read that for over 2 hours. Is what I meant by that. Are you able to compartmentalize that outside of your, once you get into normal life, then you do the show, you do all this research. Like, how do you not let all that stuff live rent free in your head? And what are your tips for doing that?
I mean, the way I do it is I vent on the show, right? So I get to express my frustration and upset at everything that's going on in the world to you guys. And once that's done, I'm done. I've said my piece. There's nothing else I can do about it. I don't control Trump. I can't let Trump make me miserable. It's out of my control. There's a point in which it becomes almost metaphysical. It's not. So I'm upset. I express my upset on the show, and then I go on with life. So it's easier for me than for you guys, I think, because you guys listen to me and you're like, oh God, the world's falling apart, and you don't have the opportunity to vent, but I do. So if I wasn't doing a daily show, I wasn't doing a regular show, it would be harder for me because I'd still be aware of what's going on in the world, and I wouldn't have a way to express my frustration and my anger and with it. So that would be the issue. It's my ability to talk about it that I let go of it that way. Right? I mean, the best way to let go of anger is to express it and move on.
Thank you.
Sure. And I hope that part of what I do for you guys is you guys don't have to go through the Twitter feed and through the news and watch Fox or watch CNN or whatever. You listen to this and you can spend an hour and a half with me, and that's it. And that's the news for the day, and you kind of internalize it and you go on living. So that you don't have to, go down the rabbit holes of all these nuts and crazies. But I do that, and then it doesn't really affect me. Usually it doesn't. Once in a while, I feel like, why am I being so obnoxious to my wife or something? And I realize I'm still carrying some of it with me, and you need to just let it go. So it sometimes can be hard.
Even Yaron Brook can overexpose on politics then.
Even Yaron Brook can, yeah, do things that are wrong. It turns out hard to believe. All right, let's do some super chats, and I think we'll call
You
it.
missed me, Yaron.
What's that?
You missed me. I didn't ask a question because
Oh, Andrew, sorry.
I've been piping in and love not
because you pipe in all the time. So I yeah.
But I didn't get a formal question.
To get do a formal question, then we'll get to super chats and we'll call it a day.
Yep. So the new Oxford term added to the dictionary is rage bait.
Okay.
And I kind of think it's interesting from a couple phenomenons. Like, it's a social phenomenon. Like, it's like somebody purposefully trying to get you enraged for clicks on the internet and for audience and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that as a cultural phenomenon?
Oh, I definitely think it is a cultural phenomena. I think it's a second-handed and a kind of a cheap shot, cowardly thing to do, to rage bait somebody, and it's like a hit and run, intellectual hit and run. But it's happening more and more. And again, the thing about online is you can hide behind anonymity. Most of the people who do this are cowards and would never do it face to face. And yet they feel completely comfortable saying the most outrageous, ridiculous, horrible things online.
What do you think about the fact that obviously people want to feel enraged or allow themselves to feel enraged just because they're kind of baited?
Well, it's hard not to sometimes. I mean, sometimes that you're being baited, and yet what is being said is objectively offensive. And
true.
So I have sympathy for the people who are baited into it. I mean, something is being done that is unjust and wrong and deserving of rage. It's the people who do it who I despise.
Okay. I was thinking of it from the perspective of, like, I do think the mixed economy and all of the forces and all of the implications of the mixed economy does cause people pent up anger.
Yeah,
towards,
I think that's
towards
right.
their fellow citizens.
Ayn Rand talks about that a lot. This is the consequence of the mixed economy. It destroys our soul. It makes us zero-sum thinkers. It makes us enemies of one another. And this is part of its expression. And it's a mixed economy of the soul, not just a mixed economy of economics. We don't have values. We don't have principles. If we do, they're mixtures of all kinds of stuff, or they're really bad principles and bad moral values. And that frustrates us because there's a sense in which we know they're wrong and bad, but we don't know what to do about it. And yeah, so people are very confused out there. And we're seeing the expression of that confusion that is a result of this mixed economy of values and a mixed economy of economics all over the internet, particularly on my YouTube feed, YouTube comments. All right, thanks, Andrew. Jason, with high taxes and runaway spending, Washington State wants a constitutional change to tax 1 million plus earners, as if these 21,530 will stay. I'd rather sell a billionaire a mountain or a dam. Any non-flippant way to raise $3 billion to keep the rich. I mean, two things. I don't think they'll go. You think they're all going to leave. I don't think they're going to leave. I mean, they didn't leave. They haven't really left California. I mean, a millionaire tax was passed in California. It raised the top marginal state income tax from 10 to 13% if you made over $1 million a year. How many people left because of that? 3? I don't know. Not a lot. I mean, the exodus from California was not over that. And then that was supposed to be temporary. And then they made it permanent. And how many people left? There's still more millionaires in California than any other place anyway, in the United States, I think. I think even more than New York and more than Washington State. So first, I think you overestimate how many people will actually leave. I think many of them will actually stay. Second, sure, there's an easy way to raise money. taxing millionaires actually doesn't raise that much money. It would be easier way to raise money is to tax the middle class. Middle class is where the money is. There's more money in the middle class than there is in the upper 1%, top 1%. Start taxing the lower middle class. We don't tax the lower middle class at all. They don't pay any taxes. So if you really were serious about it, one way to raise the amount of revenue for government is to increase the base, increase the number of people paying into the system, as opposed to taking money out of the system. What politicians have done over the years is reduce the number of people paying into the system. So they've cut taxes on lower middle class. They've made it zero if you're below a certain income level. So and that has increased the burden of taxation on the rich, so that you keep having to increase taxes on the rich to keep up. But the reality is that the base is shrinking. So you could increase sales taxes to raise the $3 billion. There are lots of ways in which you can raise taxes if you wanted. But of course, the real solution is to cut spending. All right, Harper Campbell. You say the left always wins. Is that really true? Communism collapsed worldwide and the Democratic Party shifted to the right for decades after the Reagan Revolution. I mean, no, they didn't. Not really. I mean, they became lefts, extreme leftists, but it's not that they shifted right. It's not that they advocated for free markets. They just advocated for less socialism. So, but it's not like they deregulated in mass or they did anything dramatic. I mean, the most dramatic thing Clinton did was welfare reform. And a lot of what Clinton had to do, he was forced to do by Newt Gingrich. So no, my point about the left is they win the moral battle. And as a consequence, I mean, think of all the left's victories, right? JFK instituted the New Deal. Republicans, the right supposedly, claimed that they would overturn it. As soon as they got into power, they didn't overturn it. They doubled down on it. And then the left brought us the Great Society under Johnson. And the Republicans said, oh, as soon as we get into power, we'll overturn that. And they haven't overturned it. They've doubled down on it. They're much more enthusiastic. The welfare state has not shrunk under the right. It increases under the right. The right have become the biggest defenders of the welfare state. The left won on gay marriage. The left won for a while, at least, on abortion. Maybe it's losing now on abortion. Certainly on all the economic issues, the left has won. Now, it hasn't won in a sense that we're socialist, but it's won in a sense that the Republicans, the right, never even doesn't even talk about reversing the programs of the left. So in that sense, the left always wins. Michael, and the turn to the right was very short-lived. Michael says, what is Alex Epstein up to these days? I mean, what he has been throughout, educating people about energy. I think he's more involved in politics than ever before. I'm going to try to interview him soon. I'm going to try to get him on the show to interview him soon, so you can ask him directly. Neo, I'm still shocked that Israel and the United States were able to make up after the U.S. Liberty incident. What's your take on the incident? I mean, I'm not shocked at all. It was a mistaken friendly fire incident. The United States has killed, in the Iraq War, in the first Iraq War, in the Gulf War in 1991, Americans killed more American troops than Iraqis did. That is, there were more casualties from friendly fire than there were from enemy fire. It's just part of war. I mean, nobody is surprised by it. Nobody is shocked by it except the anti-Semites who want to make a big deal out of it. The Liberty is not unusual at all. It is a common occurrence in war, and it was a mistake. There have been, 9 different reports on it, official reports on it. It's been going, and all the questions have been answered. People continue to lie about it. Obviously, the sailors on the boat were pretty traumatized about it, and they have all kinds of conspiracy theories about it. But the reality is there was mistaken friendly fire. Mistaken friendly fire happens all the time. I mean, I was witness directly to, witness, we saw it almost in real time. In 1982, a whole Israeli column of tanks, kids, 18, 19-year-old kids, killed by an Israeli pilot who thought they were an enemy column of tanks. And people say, how could that be? I mean, they're all marked. It's clear that they're Israeli tanks. They're not Syrian tanks. Any fool could see that. Well, a very, very well-trained, sophisticated Israeli pilot in the fog of war bombed his own tanks, and he killed a number of people. No, I mean, in the fog of war, in the intensity of action, none of that is obvious. None of that is obvious. And people make a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. People die. A lot of people in wars, more people die because of mistakes that are made than because of enemy brilliance. Liberty was a mistake. Nothing more than that.
You know how the anti-Semites you're on, like, they want to make you think that people are saying that Israel is perfect. But who actually says Israel's perfect?
Yeah, nobody says that. I mean, yep, you can find so many errors of logic on their side. It's truly stunning. Like numbers, you spoke of how people shouldn't really plan more than 50 years out. So how does that tie into a philosophy taking 100 years or more to spread? Well, I mean, you're not planning it out for 100 years, but you realize that it's going to take 100 years or so to spread. You plan for the next few decades. You plan to maximize the impact tomorrow and over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But you don't plan it. There's no plans at the Institute for what happens 100 years from now. I mean, it would be bizarre to have such a plan. How do you know what technologies will be, what the state of the world will be? Maybe we're in dark ages. Maybe we've had a post-nuclear apocalyptic. I mean, who knows? So you plan for the future that you have some reasonable estimate of what's going to happen in, but your horizon can still be 100 years in a sense of it's going to take 100 years for all this to have an impact if all goes well. Ginger, are you saying that people should be taught epistemology first and foremost so they can get objectivism? No, I don't think people should be taught epistemology, and except for specialists. I think people need to be taught to think. They need to be taught to use their minds. And that is certainly what people should be taught. And people should model good epistemology. They should model how to use their mind properly. We should be using concepts effectively. We should be communicating logically in that sense. But no, I don't think we should go out there and start teaching people formal epistemology. We're not going to get very far. There are very few people who have any interest in that or have any capacity to actually understand the process of formal epistemology. What people need is within their context to be able to use their reason. And for that, they need the basic thinking skills. They need basic understanding of logic and basic understanding of how to think, which does not involve, teaching epistemology. Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think, for example, look, civilization did very well even before Ayn Rand came up with the theory of concepts. So, people came up with concepts even before they had a theory of concept formation. So theory of concept formation is important and should animate how intellectuals approach their topics and how intellectuals communicate ideas. But in terms of literally teaching concept formation to people, very few people need to know the theory of concept formation.
The theory of concept formation is going to eventually cure the world of Platonism once,
Yes, but not directly, not in a direct way.
Right.
Okay, Molten Splendor. Regaining Ayn Rand's description, an American sense of life would seem to be a first step in heading towards culture of objectivism. But why did we lose the sense of life so quickly? Well, it wasn't so quickly. It's taken 100 or so years for us to lose that sense of life. We haven't lost, I don't know that we've lost it completely. It's 100, 150 years. We lost it because it had no philosophical grounding. It had no philosophical foundation. It was eroded by primarily our intellectual and political leadership, undermined it over and over again. And there's only so much that people can respond emotionally without having a solid understanding and grasp of what was going on around them. At some point, that emotional response is going to give way to the benevolence of the ideas that they hold. Michael, thoughts on the movie Nuremberg? So I'm not sure which movie you're talking about. I understand there's a new movie called Nuremberg. I have no idea. I haven't seen it, so I don't know anything about it. If you're talking about, the old movie, what was it? About the Nuremberg trials with Spencer Tracy and that's an amazing 3+ hour movie. That's an amazing movie. Judgment in Nuremberg. Thank you. Judgment in Nuremberg. Then that's an amazing movie, one of the great movies out there, and you'll learn a lot about justice and about how to think about what happened in World War II. So that is a recommended movie. I don't know about this new Nuremberg movie and what it is and what it's about. I'd be suspicious if it's about the trials again, or it's about anything about that, because it's modern.
It's built on this guy's book, who was the psychologist who interviewed the. So there was a book written about him a few years ago.
Interviewed the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm suspicious. So I'll probably see it because I'm curious, but I don't expect anything good. Given it's a psychologist, and then given on top of that, it's a modern interpretation of what he wrote into a movie. It's got to be, I don't know, overly psychologizing and too little about ideas. But it'll be interesting. It'll be anything that treats that topic is going to be interesting and reflective of the state of the world. I don't know who James Vanderbilt, the director, is. I don't know what else he did. All right, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Jacob.
Quick follow up. So for budgeting, because it was related to the last question. So if we make our disposable income for now, but say we want kids in 2 to 3 years, start with 1, maybe 2, how would you budget that in? Or would you say any future promotions or increases in pay could cover that? We already budget in $8,000 for HSA a year, so we'll have like $30,000 within 3 years for that.
Yeah, I mean, kids are not that expensive healthcare wise, and your diaper budget goes up, right? Diapers suddenly become a big item.
Well,
but on the other
work
hand,
for P&G, so diapers are pretty cheap.
there you go. So you work for P&G, so kids are not that expensive. There's a lot of expenses associated with them, particularly if you both work and then there's childcare. But if there's no childcare, then it's not an issue. But on the other hand, you're going to spend less on dinners out, movies, having a life, right? So all the other stuff that you do is gone because you'll be completely focused on the kids. So you'll save money. I wouldn't try to overly budget. I mean, make an estimate of what you think you need. Think about if there's any like childcare. Think about how you're going to deal with childcare because it is expensive. And if you're relying on 2 incomes and suddenly a part of one of those incomes is going to childcare, that's the one item you might want to think about budgeting for kids. Other than that, they're not that expensive.
Yaron?
What?
At that age, were you just like living on debt? Because you said you weren't like saving until your mid-30s.
And our largest monthly expense at a certain point was diapers. I mean, we just didn't spend money on anything. We didn't go out. We had a crummy, we had a car that my father-in-law bought for us, a $3,000 old Honda Accord. So we had one car. We rented in those days. It was in Austin, so rent was cheap, relatively cheap. We had a decent apartment, but
But weren't you getting your PhD? Like, wasn't that?
Yeah, I was getting a PhD and I
That's
was working.
expensive.
I was working.
Yeah.
No, PhD didn't cost anything. I was on scholarship, and
okay.
I worked. Right, I did consulting and I worked for my professors and I taught. But you know, we lived on well less than $20,000 a year. I mean, I still have because I did Quicken. I still have my. I can still tell you exactly what I spent money on and what my income was, and we managed. I mean, you know, people tell me, you know, how do you manage? There are trade-offs. You don't go out. Like going out was a big deal, right? A big deal. You eat at home. You don't buy expensive toys. You don't have a big, you know, in those days, didn't have a big television, a little television with a VHS tapes. I mean, I don't know, you survive. You don't buy.
Yeah,
But
I think I
modern
may be doing a
Americans,
little
modern
analysis
Americans.
paralysis.
What's that?
I think I may be doing a little analysis paralysis.
Yeah, I think you're doing analysis paralysis. Figure out a budget for your disposable income, what you think you need approximately to live off of. And there's a lot of flexibility within. So if you suddenly discover you're eating out too much and you cut back on that and you spend the money on something else. I mean, it's don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. But, you know,
But you can't have the same life as if you didn't have children. You know, your lifestyle is going to change.
Yeah, once you have children, your lifestyle is going to change. But your spending habits will adjust, but you can live within the same budget. You just adjust. You just have trade-offs. You just stop doing some things and do other things.
I find you don't have a social life because you're focused on your kids. You save so much money.
That's right. That's right. You don't again. I mean, you're so focused on the kids, you don't really go out. You know, maybe once in a while you go away for a weekend and you get somebody to babysit. But you know, yeah, there's not a lot of expenses. I don't know. We were for 6 years while I was in school, and my wife was not allowed to work because she was on an F2 visa. I was on an F1 visa, so I couldn't work off campus. I could only work on campus. We survived on very little money. So, and then when I got my first job as a professor, I think the salary was $63,000 a year. I literally thought I was a gazillionaire. I thought I was a billionaire. I'd never imagined that much money. I didn't, you know, I started a business that failed because of that, because I thought I was so flush with money, I could just do all kinds of crazy things with it. But survived it all and did well. So
look at you now.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can do better.
I've seen the apartment tour. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, you know, that's you can do a lot with a little, and don't overthink it. Just think. You got to think in terms of trade-offs. You got to think in terms of I don't have to do this. I can do something else. So I don't have to go out, you know, twice a week to nice dinners. I can go once a week. I can go none at all, and I'll still live a good, fulfilling life. That is, the goodness of your life is not dependent on any particular material thing.
Yep, I agree. Thanks.
All right, guys, have a great weekend. I will see you guys on Monday with Nikos. We got Nikos. That'll be fun. Bye.